Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula, when a x squared plus bx plus c equals 0, is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. What that means is this. If I have x squared plus 3x minus 5 equals 0, and I want to find out what x equals, well, I have my a, my b, and my c. So a equals 1, b equals 3, and c equals negative 5. So I plug those values into this equation to solve for x. So x equals negative b, so that'll be negative 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Well, 3 squared is 9, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 5, all over 2 times a, which is 1. So I have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 plus 20, all over 2. If I simplify that, I have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 29 divided by 2. And that's the final answer. Well, let's say we have x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Well, a equals 1, b equals 2, and c equals negative 3. Well, if we plug it into our quadratic formula, x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared. Well, b squared is 4, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 3, divided by 2 times a, which is 1. We'll simplify this, so negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 plus 12 divided by 2. Well, bring it down here, and I have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 16 divided by 2. Well, that's negative 2 plus or minus 4 divided by 2. Now it becomes two equations. It becomes negative 2 plus 4 divided by 2, and negative 2 minus 4 divided by 2. So negative 2 plus 4 is 2, and then divided by 2, and that's 1. Then you have negative 2 minus 4, which is negative 6, divided by 2, and that's negative 3. So my answers are 1 and negative 3. What happens when a is not 1? Well, let's say we have 3x squared minus 8x plus 2 equals 0. So we're going to use the quadratic formula to solve for x. Well, in this case, a equals 3, b equals negative 8, and c equals 2. Well, we plug these into our quadratic formula. And x equals negative b. Well, negative 8 is going to be positive 8. Or plus or minus the square root of b squared. Well, negative 8 squared is negative 8 times negative 8. So that's positive 64 minus 4ac. So minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is 2. All over 2 times a, which is 3. So I have 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus 24. All over 6. Well, that'll be 8 plus or minus the square root of 40 over 6. Now, I can break up that square root of 40. So it becomes 8 plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 10 all over 6. Well, I know the square root of 4, so that's 8 plus or minus 2 square root of 10 over 6. Now I notice that my 8, my 2, and my 6 are all even numbers. That means they can all be divided by 2. So I'll divide them all by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So my final answer is 4 plus or minus the square root of 10 divided by 3. And that's how you use the quadratic formula to solve for x. So let's say we have a situation like this where I have x squared minus 14x equals negative 49. Well, we want to make sure that when we solve these functions for x, we want to make sure that it's equal to 0. Well, right here I have it is equal to negative 49. So what I'll do is add 49 to both sides. And I'll rewrite it as x squared minus 14x plus 49 equals 0. All right, so now we'll use the quadratic formula. A equals 1, B equals negative 14, and C equals 49. All right, so x equals negative b, well, negative 14 is positive 14, plus or minus the square root of 14 squared, which is 196, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 49, all over 2 times a, which is 1. All right, now I have 14 plus or minus the square root of 196 minus 196 divided by 2. Well, 14 plus or minus the square root of, well, 196 minus 196 is 0 divided by 2. Well, that's just 14 divided by 2. And 14 divided by 2 is 7. So our answer is 7. X equals 7.